Hola, ¿cómo estás? Yo, guys, welcome back again today. Today we'll be talking about the queen of salsa music. Celia Cruz was born in Havana, Cuba in 1925. She would grow up in Santos district in Havana. She would grow up in a working class neighborhood. Cruz was the second of four kids and was exposed to diverse musicians and performers in Havana. She would grow up with an extended family of 14, and her father was Simon Cruz, who worked on the railroads. Her mother, Catalina, was a homemaker who took care of the extended family. Growing up singing and dancing, Cruz would eventually find her way into her music career. She would go on to finish high school and then attended the normal school for teachers in Havana. She initially intended to become a literature teacher, but after winning a talent show, she would pursue her singing career. Cruz would start to perform at local radio stations and recorded her first song in Venezuela in 1948. She would be known for singing guaracha rapid Cuban tempo music. She was even known for shouting "azúcar" in her music. This was due to Cruz being at a restaurant in Miami and her waiter asking if she would like sugar with her coffee. She would use the term sugar, screaming it in many of her songs, to remember enslaved Africans in Cuba who worked on sugar plantations. In 1950, she would have her first breakthrough. She would replace lead singer Marta Silva in the very popular Afro-Latino orchestra La Sonora. This would take Cruz on the road singing with the orchestra. This would lead her to television, radio, and eventually appearing in 5 movies, which were produced in Mexico. Once returning to Cuba, she would create albums with La Sonora Orchestra. These songs would be compiled as full albums for Cruz. At the same time, Cruz would headline at Havana's Tropicana nightclub in the 1950s. Just a few years later, in 1959, after the Cuban Revolution, Havana's nightlife would be no more. While in Mexico, the band would renounce Fidel Castro's socialist regimen, and in 1960, they were exiled from Cuba. The orchestra and Cruz would leave Cuba at this time. Cruz would go back to Mexico and then to the United States. Once Cruz arrived in New Jersey, USA, she would get married. In 1962, Cruz would marry Pedro Knight. Pedro Knight was the orchestra's first trumpet player. 3 years later, her husband would become her manager and musical director after Cruz left the orchestra for her solo career. After 15 years, in 1965, she would see how hard it was to be a solo artist. After recording numerous albums with bandleader Tito, Cruz could not catch the wide audience that she wanted in the 1960s and 1970s. A breakthrough would happen in the early 1970s. Cruz would be identified with salsa in the New York City scene and sang in the Latin opera version of Who's Rock? Opera Tommy. She would perform in New York's Carnegie Hall. Cruz would also update Latin classics on Johnny Pacheco's Vella record label and record them. This would shoot her to the top of the salsa scene in New York City. She would go on to record many albums with Pacheco. Maybe her most well-known, loved, and classic song was on her first album with him. In 1974, Celia and Johnny was released. Kimbara would be the breakout song on the album. Cruz would go on to make 3 albums with Willie Colon in 1977, 1981, and 1987. Cruz was known for her very African-Cuban intros, high-energy opera performances, low and high-pitched transitions with ease, and flamboyant costumes. Her high-heel choices became so famous, that the Smithsonian Institution acquired a pair for their institution. She would go on to appear in such films as The Mambo Kings in 1992 and have a documentary which was called My Name is Celia Cruz in 1988. In 2003, Cruz would pass away of brain cancer, with hundreds of thousands of people attending her funeral. She would win 3 Grammy Awards and 4 Latin Grammys. Cruz also had 23 gold albums, the President's National Medal of Arts, and in 2016, she was honored at the Grammys with the Lifetime Achievement Award. To this day, she is one of the most famous Afro-Latinos of all time and is known as the Queen of Salsa. Please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification down there so you get all my videos. Add me on all social medias, which is African Network, which is Instagram, Twitter, SoundCloud, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat. Each one teach one. Always love each other. Always learn from each other. And yo, guys, until next time, keep singing. Adios. One love.